Okay, folks, today we're going to start out our discussion of mitosis, and we have a couple of objectives. First of all, we want to be able to tell me what is a gene. What is heredity? You need to be able to tell me the difference between two types of reproduction, sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction. You need to be able to tell me about chromosomes and karyotypes. What is a karyotype? Okay? And the final thing is homologues. Homologous chromosomes. What's the difference between homologous chromosomes and sister chromatid? What's the difference? So you should be able, after today, to do those things. So let's start out right now with genes. Okay, genes. Eukaryotic DNA is organized in chromosomes. Genes have specific places on chromosomes. So if I look, here is the double helix of DNA. We know that DNA has different base pairs, right? Adenine, thymine, guanine, cytosine. We'll talk more in depth about DNA later on after we get done with genetics, okay? But here is a strand of DNA. It's a double helix, okay, and it has nitrogenous bases and alternating sugars and phosphates. Now, if you look at the DNA here, okay, let me move my little video box here to the other side, okay. If you look, the DNA right here, let me get my arrow, right here is the DNA, and that specific place of DNA is where genes are, okay. So DNA has different genes. And finally, okay, we blow it up even more. Okay, we blow it up even more, and we see these bands. Okay, we see these bands, and this is a code for a particular gene. And these bands will have what we call introns and exons. So the chromosome we see that looks like an X when we were talking about mitosis and meiosis, okay? Those chromosomes are just wrapped up DNA, and the wrapped up DNA has different genes on it. Heredity. Now, what can you tell me about heredity? If you would have to give me a definition of heredity, man, I can't talk right now. If you'd have to give me a definition of heredity, what would you say? Nice and loud, Lewis. Something that we get from our parents. We inherit genes from mom and dad, don't we? Okay. Do you look more like your mom? More like your dad? Or you even blend to both of them? Okay? What do you think? What about you, Brandon? Look more like your mom? Okay? I myself look more like my dad. Okay? I look more like my dad. I can even be walking down the street and people will think they saw my dad. I'm kind of crazy. Now, heredity is a way of transferring genetic information to offspring. A way of transferring genetic information to offspring. Now, is this just with humans? No. Okay, any offspring. Okay, any offspring. Do you think, say, for instance, that some dogs pass on certain traits? Okay. Or some dogs are even bred because of their traits, right? Can you think of any of those? Huh? Your dog. Okay. A black lab and Australian shepherd, and what are they bred for? Speed and agility. Okay? Speed and agility. You ever heard of a labradoodle? Okay? What's the big thing about a labradoodle? Anybody know? They don't shed. Excellent, Dylan. They don't shed. My lab sheds all over the place. I've got a mutt. She's a German shepherd and a lab mix. She sheds all over the place. But a labradoodle won't. Okay? Labradoodle won't. So, a way of transferring genetic information to the offspring. The chromosome theory of heredity says that chromosomes carry genes. And we just showed you that picture of chromosomes carrying a gene. And we refer to genes as the unit of heredity. The unit of heredity. Genes. Whoa. Whoa. Okay. That guy doesn't want to move on the smart board, so I'm going to have to come up here. He doesn't want to move at all. So, the unit of heredity is genes. I can remember many, many years ago, okay, many years ago, it's kind of a science, funny. I asked a guy, I said, okay, where do you get your genes from? And his reply, Walmart. I said, okay, all right. Are those the same genes? Obviously, no. Okay? Obviously, no. They're not even spelled the same. But a gene is a unit of heredity. Where do you get your genes from? Biology-wise, your parents we talked about. Okay? Your parents. So right here, we have the little cat. And if you look on the cat, she's feeding. I can see 1, 2, 3, 4. This is probably a little kitty there too. Okay? So, the mama cat feeding her kittens. She gave them her genes. Now, are they the same? They're not identical, are they? Okay, there's some variation there. We'll talk about genetic variation later on, probably next week. Okay? Genetic variation. Reproduction. Reproduction. We're going to talk about two different types of reproduction. The first type is asexual. Okay? What happens if we put a or an in front of something? Think back to your prefixes. A or an, what does that mean? Huh? Well, it's not one. It's not two. Okay? A or an means no or not. Okay? No or not. So, in this particular one, asexual, okay, this is not sexual reproduction. Okay? Many single-cell organisms reproduce by splitting, budding, and parthenogenesis. Okay, splitting, budding, or parthenogenesis. Some multicellular organisms can reproduce asexually, producing what we call a clone. Producing what we call a clone. A clone is an offspring that is genetically identical to the parent. So it could happen. We could have asexual reproduction in single cell organisms. We could have it in multicellular organisms. Picture right here. This is a hydra. These are little tentacles. The hydra gets its food, stings its prey, gets the food, and here's its mouth. Now, if you look, this is a bud. Okay, this is a bud. This is a new hydra that is forming. You can already see the little tentacles. So eventually, this little hydra, this little bud, will be a clone to that big hydra. It will be identical. Okay? Here are some bugs. Okay? Here are some bugs that went through parthenogenesis. Okay? A single parent. Okay? There's no genetic. They're identical to the parent. Okay? Sometimes we see, ants and bees do this. Okay? A lot of the insects are doing that. Now, the second type of reproduction is sexual reproduction. And what happens during sexual reproduction is the fusion of two gametes to produce a single zygote. We'll get some terminology there. Two gametes that produce a single zygote. Yeah, Brittany?
Is it possible for, bugs to do both?
Is it possible for bugs to do both, asexual and sexual reproduction? I cannot think of any that can do both off the top of my head. Okay, I would have to look that up to make sure, but I cannot think of any right now that do both. Okay, I'm not saying that that can't happen. I'm saying I'd have to research it. So maybe I'll look that up here in a little bit. Okay. But sexual reproduction is the fusion of two gametes to produce a single zygote. It introduces greater genetic variation, and it allows for genetic recombination. It allows for genetic recombination. That's what we're talking about right now, that we get our genetic information from our mom and our dad. Okay? So we're literally, half of our information comes from mom, half of it comes from dad. So we're a combination of the two. With the exception of self-fertilizing organisms, such as some plants, the zygote has gametes from two different parents. So some plants can fertilize themselves, what we call self-fertilization. But other than that, the zygotes come from gametes of two different parents. Chromosomes. Okay. We're going to talk about a karyotype. Okay. A karyotype is an ordered display of an individual's chromosomes. We're going to do a little web quest tomorrow on karyotypes. Okay, we're going to do a web quest tomorrow on karyotypes. But it's an order of an individual's chromosomes. It is a collection of chromosomes from mitotic cells. It's the chromosomes from mitosis. The chromosomes from mitosis, which we ended last semester on, mitosis. Okay. Staining can reveal visible band patterns, and it also can show us some abnormalities. Can show us some abnormalities of the chromosomes. If you look right here, okay, we're going to talk about this in a little bit, about, homologous chromosomes, sister chromatid, okay? But you see one right here. This is a sister chromatid. That is this one. This one on the right is this other one, okay? So this is one sister chromatid. This is the other sister chromatid, and they make up what we call homologous chromosomes. Now, if you look, this is a karyotype for a human being, okay? Human beings have 23 pairs. So if you count these, you can count all of them. There's 5, 10, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, and here is the 23rd. The 23rd pair determine the sex. Those are what we call the sex chromosomes. If you can see, this particular one has a long one and a short one. That is an X and a Y chromosome. So this is the karyotype of a male. So in order to tell whether you have a male or a female, all you have to do is just look at that 23rd set, that 23rd pair. If there are 2 long ones, they're 2 X's. It's a female. Okay. If there's a long one and a short one, it's an X and a Y, and you have a male. Here's another one. Okay. Here's another one. If we look here, we see that each one has a different number. That's how we determine them, and we line them up according to size. Okay, so the bigger ones are up at the top, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the smaller ones, 21, 22, are down at the bottom. Now look at this one. See how I have 2 that are similar, and there's no Y, is it? So this is a karyotype of a female. Okay? Can you see, too, how the bands match up? The bands on this one are at the same place as the bands on this one. Can you see that? That's another way we distinguish and say, okay, how do we group them? How do we match them up? We match up the different bands. Here's another one. What's this one? Male or female? It's a male. We got an X and a Y on the sex chromosomes right there. Right here is one that has Down syndrome. Can you see what's wrong? Can you see anything wrong with this karyotype? 21. Look at 21 right here. 21 has 3 different chromosomes. That's why it says up here, trisomy 21. That's what that means. The chromosome 21 has 3 chromosomes. That's what Down syndrome is. Down syndrome, and you probably know someone who has Down syndrome. Well, they have 3 chromosomes on the 21st. Trisomy 21. Okay? Now here, excuse me, are what we call homologues. Here are what we call homologues. We're going to finish taking the notes, but we will come around, folks, when we're done, and you need to draw this picture. I left a space for you to draw that picture. I'll come back to it, when we're done with the notes so you can draw it. Okay? Homologues. Chromosomes exist in homologous pairs in diploid cells, except for the sex chromosomes, the X and the Y. Remember, they're not the same. Okay? They're not the same. They don't pair up. X is a lot bigger than the Y. Okay? So, the 23rd are the sex chromosomes. All the other ones we refer to as autosomes. Okay? So 1 through 22 are called autosomes, and the 23rd one is called the sex chromosomes. In humans, 23 chromosomes are donated by each parent. 23 pair equals 46 total chromosomes. Gametes. Okay. Gametes are the sperm and the ova. Sometimes we refer to that as the egg. The sperm and the ova. They contain 22 autosomes and 1 sex chromosome. They are what we call haploid, meaning that they have half the genetic material. In human beings, the haploid number we refer to as N. In human beings, we say N is equal to 23. Okay? Fertilization, okay, when the sperm and the egg come together, sygnamy, results in a zygote with 2 haploid cells of chromosomes. We call those diploid. And diploid is 2N. If N is 23, what's 23 times 2? 46. So in human beings, a diploid cell has 46 chromosomes. Most cells in the body are produced by mitosis. We talked about mitosis earlier. Most cells in the body are produced by mitosis. However, the gametes, and only the gametes, the sperm and the ova, the sperm and the egg, are produced by meiosis. Okay? They are produced by meiosis. Now what I'm going to do is, you got about 6 minutes left, folks. I'm going to go back to that picture, and you need to color and draw the picture in your interactive notebook in that open space. Okay? So let me get back to it. There we go. So draw and color that guy.